Hello and welcome to the episode 198 of What a Fab Day. I am your host, Simon Mas. 2 radio sessions for the BBC, the world premiere of Yellow Submarine, and the return of John Lennon to an Abbey Road session are the meat and potatoes of today's episode. Let's start as usual with some early Beatles action. On the 17th of July 1961, the lads, featuring Pete Best on drums, performed their 15th lunchtime concert at the Cavern club in Liverpool. At night, they graced the stage of the Litherland Town Hall, the place where they had their welcome back show after their very first Hamburg residency, as we will see in episode 361 of What a Fab Day. Another performance in 1962, the only one the Beatles ever had in Swindon. The band performed 2 60-minute sets for their third ever appearance in the south of England at the McIlroy's Ballroom. The show, organized by JB Promotions, saw the lads performing in front of about 360 people, about a fifth of the venue's total capacity. Promoter Bill Reid is quoted in BeatlesBible.com saying, "They were a very unusual band. They just turned up in a van, got out and got up on stage. They were entirely different to the other bands around at the time who were playing in gold lame costumes. People kept telling us they were going to have a hit record, but we heard this all the time." The evening pay was £27 10 shillings, about £600 in 2020 money. Let's proceed with 2 radio sessions for the BBC. In 1963, the Beatles were at the Playhouse Theatre in London to record yet another appearance for a BBC radio show, this time for the Easy Beat programme. The show, the third featuring Beatles material, was aired on the 21st of July between 10:31 and 11:30 am. The lads recorded 4 songs in front of a live audience. I Saw Her Standing There, A Shot of Rhythm and Blues, There's a Place, and Twist and Shout. Moving on to the 17th of July 1964, we find the Fabs busy at the BBC Paris studio, again in London, recording their 4th consecutive bank holiday special, once again called From Us to You. We have encountered the format in episode 59 and 121 of this podcast, but the very first From Us to You will have to wait until episode 352 to get its share of your attention. Anyhow, the rehearsal and the taping took place between 2:15 and 6:15 p.m, with the Beatles chatting with host Don Wardle, most often heard as a presenter on Radio Luxembourg back then, reading the listeners' requests and performing Long Tall Sally, If I Fell, I'm Happy Just to Dance With You, Things We Said Today, I Should Have Known Better, Boys, Kansas City, Hey Hey Hey, and A Hard Day's Night. It was the first and only time that I Should Have Known Better and I'm Happy Just to Dance With You were performed after their respective recording sessions. 4 years later, in 1968, the world premiere of the Yellow Submarine animation film took place at the London Pavilion on Piccadilly Circus in London. All the Beatles were in attendance, Paul McCartney being the only one showing up unaccompanied by a partner. This naturally caused some gossip until, as we will see in episode 201, Jane Asher announced that Paul and her were no longer together, live on BBC. After the premiere, the Beatles and their guests, including members of the Rolling Stones, The Who, and Status Quo, went to a celebratory party at the Royal Lancaster Hotel, where the in-house discotheque was renamed Yellow Submarine for the occasion. The name was kept for several years afterwards. In the episode description, you will find a link to some footage of the event, without audio. Before moving on with the final bit of the show, revealing the possible cause of John's absence from the Abbey Road sessions, let me remind you once again to share this episode on your social media if you liked it. If you detested it, you probably won't, but if you are still listening this far, perhaps there's hope for redemption. Contact me and tell me what you would improve, and I'll promise I'll lend you an ear. In any case, visit www.simonmas.com/support to find out what you can do to make sure that I can continue to produce the best music-related content I can. Thank you! On the 17th of July 1969, from 2:30 to 6:30 p.m. in Studio 3 and from 6:30 and 11:15 p.m. in Studio 2 in Abbey Road, the Beatles worked on 2 tracks for their new album. First, Paul McCartney, having arrived early on the premises, made his first attempt at recording the lead vocal of Oh Darling. He was unhappy with the result and decided to try again, once per day, until he had nailed it. In the Complete Beatles Recording Sessions book, tape operator Alan Parsons recalls how Paul complained that he had lost the ability to produce a certain grittiness in his voice at command, saying, 5 years ago, I could have done this in a flash. Later, the whole band recorded overdubs of backing vocals, piano, and bubbles blown in a glass of water on Octopus's Garden, with John Lennon taking an active part in the process for the first time since his return on the 9th of July. See episode 190 for more info on that. Citing these first sessions, Paul McCartney commented in his 1970 plaintiff's affidavit to dissolve the Beatles, "By the time that Abbey Road was recorded, John and I were openly critical of each other's music, and he was no longer interested in the performance of songs which he had not written himself." It is true that John had openly voiced his dislike for some of Paul's songs ever since 1968, with Obladi Oblada and Maxwell's Silver Hammer being the main culprits. John felt disdain for Paul's granny music, as he once called it, a feeling that might have gone back to 1967 and the recording of When I'm 64. It is also true that Paul, as well as the rest of the Beatles, couldn't stand some of John's ideas, to the point that Lennon had decided to put them out in his own name until he came up with the concept of the Plastic Ono Band. The fact that Paul didn't want to disclose in the affidavit and in public, I doubt he ignored the fact himself, was that John was trying to come off LSD by taking heroin. At some point in early 1969, as we have seen in episode 2 and 14, John's and Yoko's heroin habit started to come in the way of his participation to the band's activity, and became impossible to hide to the journalists who chimed in the studio to interview the couple. They decided to stop in August 1969, but it took a while before they managed. Without a doubt, the effects of the drug played a part in John's indifference to the Beatles' efforts and in Yoko's miscarriage in 1969. By the time they were clean, John's heroin days were just another of the grievances that broke up the Beatles. And this, my dear listeners, leads us to the end of this episode. Thank you once again for your support, and see you tomorrow for a new exciting episode of the Fabbest podcast around. Fabbest? Is that even a word? No? Oh well. For the moment, I wish you a good day and a fab continuation. Simon Mas, music you love.